Mom opened the door. It felt as though everything happened in slow motion. The cup in her hand slipped through her fingers. She slammed the door and pushed against it as she struggled to lock it. I stood there in the middle of the living room, frozen. Hi, my name is Aaliyah. If you want to know how we've reached this point, stay tuned. If you want to continue watching more heart-wrenching, jaw-dropping videos like this one, subscribe to the channel and smash that notification bell. Did you like the movie? My dad asked as he unlocked the car. Like? I loved it! Did you see how Amanda's mom jump-kicked that thief and her father held him in a wrestling hold? I wish our lives were that exciting. My mom and dad looked at each other and then chuckled. The next day, I walked into the living room while my mom was on a call. I told you I'm not interested, my mom said as she spoke to the person on the other end of the phone before hanging up. Who was that? Oh, just some random salesperson trying to sell me something I no longer want. Can we go by Uncle Sven on Saturday? He sent me a picture of the new monkey he got. He's so cute. My mother looked at me nervously. I'll have to speak with your dad, okay? Then, without another word, she walked out of the room. Just as I picked up my phone to call my dad about heading to Uncle Sven on Saturday, he called. Hi, Dad, I was just... Listen to me. I can't get your mother on her phone or the landline. Get your mother and leave the house now. My phone went dead. Just as I was about to call my mother, the doorbell rang. Mom opened the door. It felt as though everything happened in slow motion. The cup in her hand slipped through her fingers. She slammed the door and pushed against it as she struggled to lock it. I stood there, in the middle of the living room, frozen. As soon as my mother locked the door, she grabbed my hand and dragged me towards the kitchen. Just as her hand stretched forward to open the kitchen door to head to the garage, a man walked in. Hi, Leslie Ann. It's been a while. Mom, what's going on? I cried. My mother pushed me behind her and held me close. Aaliyah, listen to me closely. Go to the place where we spent your 12th birthday. The key is in what you love the most. Go. But Mom, I protested. Go now, my mother shouted. Using the kitchen steps, I ran to my bedroom. I heard shouts and items downstairs crashing against the kitchen walls. I was tempted to go back and help my mom, but I knew she needed me to do what she asked me to do. I opened the window and climbed out to the tree that was outside my window. I hid in its branches before climbing down. As soon as I dropped to the ground, I ran as though my mom's life depended on it. Because it did. After a few minutes, I climbed another tree to catch my breath. I hope Mom is okay. I sighed. I wondered who the guy was and why he called my mom Leslie Ann. My mother's name was Michelle. Once I was sure that I was not being followed, I shimmied down the tree. For my 12th birthday party, my parents and I spent the day at Coney Island. Even though my lungs felt as though they wanted to collapse, I ran to Coney Island and did not stop till I got there. I dug into my pockets and realized I had no money to pay the entrance fee. Looks like I'll have to sneak in. I walked the outskirts of the amusement park, and once I reached a place that was dark enough, I scaled the fence. The second part of my mother's riddle was, the key is in what I love the most. What do I love the most? I mumbled to myself as I walked around looking at rides and games. A light bulb went off in my head. Movies! I ran to the Make Your Own Movies booth. When the attendant wasn't looking, I snuck in and looked for anything resembling a key. What if it's not a key? I rubbed my chin thoughtfully. I observed my surroundings. Right above the camera was a monkey. Was the monkey the clue? Hey, what are you doing in here? The attendant asked angrily. I ran out of the booth and into the crowded space. I was so confused. My mind ran back to Uncle Sven's picture. Uncle Sven had monkeys. Maybe he was the key in Mom's riddle. I decided to trust my gut. It was time to visit Uncle Sven. After walking about an hour on now blistered feet, I arrived at Uncle Sven's house and rang the doorbell. After a few seconds, Uncle Sven unlocked the door. Aaliyah, what are you doing here? He asked, ushering me inside. I sat on the sofa and rubbed my feet while I updated Uncle Sven on my eventful night. He listened intently, only asking questions when necessary. He motioned me with his finger for me to follow him. I slipped my shoes on and we walked to the garage. I watched as he went to his wall of tools and pressed a button. A door opened and Uncle Sven entered for a few seconds and returned with a large duffel bag. He ordered me to get into the car. I climbed into the back and we drove off. What's going on, Uncle Sven? Do you know who has my mom? I have an idea about what's going on, but that's all I can tell you. Your parents will have to fill you in on the rest of the story when you see them. Their secrets should be theirs to tell. Secrets? Uncle Sven said nothing but focused on the road. I wondered what kind of secrets my parents were keeping. We have to make a quick stop before we pick up your parents. He winked at me. We drove onto the Churchill Roosevelt Highway and Uncle Sven stopped under a flyover. A few minutes later, a large man jumped in the passenger seat. I felt as though his presence engulfed the interior of the car. Aaliyah, this is Grizzly. Grizzly, Aaliyah. Hi, I said politely. So, this is Leslie Ann's baby girl, Grizzly said, looking over at Uncle Sven. Huh? What is he talking about, Uncle Sven? Who is Leslie Ann? Uncle Sven and Grizzly shared a look. Neither one said a word. Uncle Sven parked the car about a block away from our house. He spun around and looked at me in the back seat. Stay here, stay low. No matter what you see or hear, do not leave this car. Understood? I nodded and watched as Uncle Sven and Grizzly armed themselves before exiting the car. About 10 minutes later, Uncle Sven and Grizzly returned with my parents. My dad had a black and blue eye, and my mom had a busted lip. I hugged my parents. We're okay, baby girl, my mother whispered in my hair. Uncle Sven drove through the mountains till we came to a huge metal gate. I watched as he spoke into the intercom and the gates creaked open. I looked at my parents, but they did not say anything. It was amazing how suddenly all the adults lost their ability to speak. We parked at the front of the large house. I held my dad's hand as we entered. Inside, 3 more people were waiting in what appeared to be a surveillance room. They greeted us and we greeted a woman named Tammy and 2 other men, Jaron and Levi. I think you should call it a night, Mom said. I want to know what's going on. I folded my arms in frustration. We'll explain everything in the morning. I promise. My parents showed me where I would be spending the night. They tucked me in, said goodnight, and left the room. The next morning, my parents sat me down to talk. I was not prepared for the secret that they were about to share with me. My mother shared with me that before she met my dad, she was a thief. More specifically, the getaway driver. Her real name was Leslie Ann Noel, but she changed it to Michelle Velasquez when she gave up her former life. In the last heist they executed, 2 of their colleagues, Devin and Raphael, did not stick to the plan, and they got greedy. The time they allocated to do the robbery, Devin and Raphael wanted more time to steal more goods. If my mother did not leave the scene when she did, everyone would have been captured. Devin and Raphael served 15 years in jail, and now they were out. The man who came to the house was Devin. He said he wanted his cut of the pie from 15 years ago. After their last heist, the team decided to stay low, but kept in close contact with each other. Mom met my dad, fell in love, got married, and had me. She decided to give up the life of thievery for her family. But sometimes the past does not stay in the past. After breakfast, the adults decided to regroup in the surveillance room. We had to come up with a plan, Tammy said. Devin and Raphael had 15 long years to come up with ideas for revenge. This time, we have to set a trap for them, Grizzly said, stroking his long beard thoughtfully. We must allow them to kidnap one of us. Since Raphael and Devin already have criminal records, they should get about 20 years to life once found guilty of kidnapping charges. We all know who they really blame for their incarceration, my mother chimed in. I will be the bait. What? I protested. But what if something happens to you? Your mom will be okay. We will never let anything happen to her under our watch, Uncle Sven said as he placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed it comfortingly. Dad was reluctant, but he knew there was no other way. While the adults finalized their plans, Tammy asked me if I wanted to get a snack. In the kitchen while placing cookies on the plate, she turned to me. Your mom is a tough cookie. You don't have to worry about her. And we wouldn't let anything happen to her. Tammy and I spent the rest of the day together chatting, playing video games, anything that kept my mind off of what was really happening. I saw you and Tammy spending time together, Mom said as she tucked me in. Yeah, I like Tammy. Do you think when this is over, she would want to come over? Sure, why not? Tammy has always been like a little sister to me, even though we drifted apart over the years. She was always there whenever I really needed her. My mother kissed me and turned off the light before she left the room. She turned to me and said, "This will be all over soon." During the night, someone shook me awake. It was Tammy. We have to leave now, she whispered. Devin and Raphael are in the house. I need to get you to safety. I slipped on my shoes and followed Tammy quietly through the house. She took me to the garage. Suddenly, a bag was over my head and I was being shoved into a vehicle. Help! Help! I screamed as I gripped the sides of the vehicle. I fought, but it was not strong enough. I was overpowered. I felt something sharp go into my arm. I felt drowsy and blacked out. When I woke up, I was chained to a bed in a small room. Sitting in a chair next to me was Tammy. Tammy, what are you doing? I asked as I tugged the chain, taking everything that little Miss Leslie Ann holds dear to her. Tammy cackled. I also wanted children, but when Devin? You set up my mom after she trusted you? Devin and Raphael trusted Leslie Ann and it got them incarcerated. Devin and I eloped the night before our last heist. After he was taken away, my entire life changed. I wanted children, but I didn't want them to grow up without their father. I didn't want them to feel the pain that I was feeling now. Tammy walked towards me. Leslie Ann is going to feel the pain. She lifted her hand and I squinted my eyes and braced for the slap, but it never came. I opened my eyes and saw a man holding Tammy back. Tammy, what are you doing? This was not part of the plan. This was part of my plan, Raphael. Getting rid of Leslie Ann's little brat? I waited years for this. We need to get back to the task at hand. We need to repay Leslie Ann for the life she bestowed upon us when she abandoned us. We'll take care of the brat after. No! I screamed, but there was nothing I could do. Tammy and Devin walked out of the room and locked the door behind them. I spent most of my time in the room, in and out of sleep, worried about my mom. I'm not sure how many days I spent in that room before I heard loud explosions, rumblings, and yelling outside the door. I watched as Uncle Sven entered my room. He unlocked the chain and scooped me up. I could barely keep my eyes open, since I was not given so much as a cup of water since Tammy captured me a few days ago. Later, while recuperating in the hospital, I found out that Devin and Raphael were captured, but Tammy was still at large. Don't worry, Aaliyah. If she tries anything, this time we will be ready for her, Uncle Sven said. I hope so.